I almost died in a Philippine slum, a month of hell as a solo traveler. By an Australian woman who lived to tell the tale. I've traveled alone through war-torn towns in Cambodia, slept in hostels with not locals in rural Laos, but nothing prepared me for the month I spent in the slums of Manila and the infection that nearly killed me. What started as an exciting tour of the beaten path turned into the nightmare of open wounds, language barriers, missing documents, and a near-death experience in one of the greatest public hospitals in the Philippines. And yes, I'm lucky to be alive. It was supposed to be authentic. That was the goal. I've been solo traveling through Southeast Asia for 5 months already. Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, all beautiful. All somewhat curated for backpackers like me. So when I flew into Manila, I deliberately avoided the resorts, the expat hangouts, the curated Airbnb tours. Instead, I found a Facebook group that connected foreign volunteers with low-income families. A woman named Mira invited me to stay near her family's community in Tondo, a slum district of Manila, notorious even among locals. They gave me a corner of their tin shack. It had no toilet, just a bucket and a hole. The fan barely worked. The water came from a communal tap that trickled at night. But it was alive, raw. Kids played barefoot in muddy alleyways. Vendors grilled fish intestines over coal beside makeshift karaoke machines. The air smelled like smoke, rotten vegetables, and diesel fumes. And I loved it until my body started to break down. About 3 weeks in, I started to itch. First, it was just some red bumps on my ankles. I thought it was mosquitoes. Then I noticed fluid-filled blisters on my calves, which I brushed off as heat rush. A few days later, I woke up drenched in sweat, hallucinating about a flooded house and people chanting in Tagalog. I remember trying to stand, but my legs buckled. They were swollen, angry red, and burning to the touch. Mira tried giving me some herbal tea. When that didn't help, she wrapped a wet rag around my head and prayed over me. I was fully delirious by then. I vaguely recall vomiting into a plastic bag and muttering something about wanting my mom. The plan had to be simple: get to the embassy, show my travel insurance, get help. But when I reached for my day pack, it was gone. Vanished. Along with my passport, credit card, cash, and vaccination documents. Whether it was stolen or forgotten somewhere, I still don't know. I only know that now I was sick, undocumented foreigner in the part of Manila most people wouldn't voluntarily enter. Mira tried to help. She took me to the barangay hall, but they were suspicious. One officer asked if I was on drugs. Another thought I might be a sex worker. It didn't help me that I looked like a sweaty mess covered in sauce. Eventually, Mira found someone with an old motorbike and convinced him to take me to the nearest public hospital. The hospital was worse than a slum. I don't say that loudly, but what I saw when we arrived made my stomach twist. The emergency room was packed, people lying on the floor, children crying, nurses yelling. A woman next to me had her head bandaged with a t-shirt. There were IV bags hanging from broomsticks. Someone had vomited next to the wall, and it hadn't been cleaned up. There were no beds. I was placed on a plastic chair and given a brown envelope with my patient number. After 3 hours, I was wheeled into a shared ward with 7 other people, some of whom looked like they were dying. They told me I had a skin infection, probably leptospirosis or bacterial cellulitis. They didn't test for it, just assumed based on symptoms. They gave me amoxicillin and paracetamol. That was it. No IV fluids, no proper fever management. A trainee nurse inserted a needle into my arm so poorly that it bent under my skin and bled into the mattress. I lay there for 2 nights. The fan barely worked. One of the other patients kept staring at me. The nurse addressed me as Puti, white girl. I heard someone whisper,
"Baka adik yan."
That literally means maybe she's a junkie. At the second night, I woke up with a cockroach crawling across my chest. I just brushed it off with a shaking hand. I hadn't eaten in days. Mira had to bring me rice and canned sardines. I couldn't keep anything down. I was fading. If Mira hadn't called her cousin, who worked part-time at immigration, I honestly don't know what would have happened. Her cousin made some calls and somehow reached the Australian embassy. Within a day, someone showed up. They looked horrified when they saw me. I was transferred to a public clinic that same night, hooked up to real machines, given real antibiotics. The doctors were shocked I hadn't gone septic. They said another 24 hours in that state and I might have lost my limb, or worse. I flew back to Sydney looking like a ghost. I'd lost 12 kilos. My skin was marked by the infection. My legs still carry faint scars from where the blisters erupted. I didn't talk about it for a long time. I was embarrassed, ashamed that I'd been so reckless. but also angry at myself for the blind romanticism that made me believe suffering equaled authenticity. I wasn't a hero. I was a sick foreigner in a place I didn't understand, depending on the kindness of people who had almost nothing. People like Mira, who saved my life. So that was a really terrifying experience of Australian backpacker from Sydney. Have you ever went through something similar? Please share in comments, and please contact me if you want your story to be shared in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe, hitting the notification bell, and I'm gonna see you next week.